Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, September 18th, show 22. I'm getting ahead of myself there. I'm trying to think it's September 22nd already, but I guess I'm not the only one that would like to time travel through this year, but that's a different.
Yeah. Sort of feels like it should be September 22nd of 2028 or something by now, but yeah, here we are in 2020 still. We're still here, guys.
We are still here. We're approaching what's going to show 26 will be a special one. I mean, that's half a year of shows right there. If we're going once a week, we're getting there.
We're getting old.
Yeah. So, well, Jay, how's it going? We're recording on a Friday. Weekend's coming. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Looking forward to a nice weekend here. Weather's going to be good down here in Buda, and I know in Austin as well. And yeah, man, it's not so good of a weekend for college football, and we'll hit on that later. But
well, actually, on that note, we got a special guest entering in right now. Let me bring him in.
Oh, yeah?
Here. Yeah, let's get him in. All right. There he is. What's up, Mike? Welcome to the show.
What's up?
Mike Holland, our Longhorn Insider, joining us here to kick off the show. We just hopped on, so this is perfect. Mike, let's jump right into it here. Since we've recorded, the Longhorns they're 1-0, just like Tom Herman says to go every day. They are actually 1-0 this season. Let's dive right into it. Let's kind of go around the horn here. What are some takeaways from you guys from the Longhorns' big 59-3 win over UTEP last week?
Mike, go ahead.
Hey guys, so that was I don't know if that was par for the course, but that looked pretty good. So from the upper deck seats that I had, the foundation was nice enough to move us up about 70 rows, but at least we were in the state. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that just kind of stands out is Sam Ehlinger is obviously just a machine. And like we kind of talked about in the preview, I think the receivers, it's just going to be by committee, and it's going to be the guys that just kind of step up. And I think you're going to see even more of that with, Jake Smith hopefully returning for Texas Tech. So that's another strong area. I think the defense played an amazing game, obviously. So just a lot of great takeaways. Not a lot you can nitpick at, maybe the run game a little bit. Didn't seem to really be a focus. I thought it was interesting that Roschon Johnson kind of seems like he's going to be the lead horse there. So I think defensively, Josh Thompson's kind of a surprise. If we can get that kind of play from him, or even just some consistency from that spot, Jamison looked really good. I think it's got a chance to be a special year. So that's kind of what you want to see. UTEP's not very good, but you still want to come out, and put it on a team like that. So what do you guys think?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I went back and rewatched the game, and it's really hard to get a grasp for. I mean, yeah, they push UTEP around, but it's UTEP. How impressive! Let's see them do it this week against Tech. Next week, I should say, as they have a bye week. But to see doing it against a Big 12 opponent will be the first true test. The defense, since that's what I was looking forward to the most. I'll start on the defense, and Thompson was somebody I obviously stood out with the interception, with the good coverage that he had all game, and just showing up in the right places at the right times. And those are the sort of things I heard Tom Herman talk about, the fact that there's going to be a 4-man rotation in the secondary this year, no matter what. They want to get all 4 of those guys on the field, and last week was a very good start for the continued development of this defense under first-year coordinator. So, Kerry, what was something that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, I got to start at quarterback. I don't know if it's quite something that stands out as we've discussed and previewed, like just how good Sam Ehlinger is going to be. So, but the first half numbers were just absolutely insane. He could have thrown for 1,000 yards. He really could. He could have thrown for 1,000 yards that night. He was at 400 plus for the half. And obviously they would never do such a thing, but he's moved into that tier. you could probably say, well, I mean, last year was a little bit of a blip on the radar, I guess, but he's moved into that tier. We don't worry about his play anymore. You know what he's going to bring. You're not concerned about him. I think the thing that stood out, Mike, you mentioned it, this receiving core. This is just the rotation of guys, and even Tariq Black, Schooler looked good on that touchdown catch.
Mm-hmm.
Kai Money getting some catches in there and making his presence felt. We'll see how much more he's going to play when conference play starts. But Josh Moore, I mean, a guy that was away from playing in games for over a year. Like, there's so much depth at the receiver position. That really stood out to me. I think Josh Thompson also, to piggyback off you guys, like, he looked impressive. He looked really impressive.
Yeah, but Mike, remember when we wide receiver, we were a little bit unsure going in, with it being so unproven just in terms of in-game production. And you have to like what you see out of that group after game one.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, obviously Tariq Black, I mean, he kind of looks like that top 100 national recruit that has just not been able to get over the injuries. So I think that's going to be a huge addition. Josh Moore, like you said, looked great. Obviously, the fastest guy on the team. Obviously, that was kind of a busted coverage by the safety, but
right.
I mean, he made other great catches too. And you still got to put the ball on the money. And that's Sam's just putting the ball on the money. Pretty much other than two miscommunications. I mean, what an overall great game. And I think obviously getting a lot of guys game experience is going to really help going forward. The position that we kind of almost dismissed in the preview was the tight end position. And we played a ton of 12 personnel with two tight ends on the field. And to see the way that they were used was pretty remarkable. If Cade Brewer can stay healthy, I know he caught a touchdown, looked great in blocking, running across the middle, making some catches. That's just added bonus. And you put Jared Wiley out there. I mean, it just looked really, really aesthetically, it just looked really pleasing to see the type of formations, how they're going to be used. And like I said, if Sam's going to play anywhere near that in conference level, I mean, it's going to be a pretty remarkable season. And then just to kind of touch on the offensive line, Sam Cosme, obviously, that guy's just a beast. But I think the right side, I think it was a concerted effort to try to get the run game going on that side. I did notice that we were running a lot of plays to that side because I think we know what we have on the left side of that. And then I think on the right side, Christian Jones struggled a little bit early, but I think he kind of found his groove starting in the second quarter. So I thought that was a pretty good plus there. And then Denzel Okafor, he's just kind of Denzel Okafor. You're not going to get, you're probably just going to get average to maybe above average play. He's one of the strongest guys on the team. So I think, at least being a senior there, he's got a lot of experience. A little worried about that side, but, they got some good experience that game. And overall, you can't really fault where in a game where you could have gotten probably like Kerry said, 800 to 1,000 yards if you really left those guys out there. I mean, it's really hard to nitpick on that kind of stuff. But, yeah, I thought overall it's just a great game plan.
Well, I guess some of the new, I guess this was kind of a result that we all expected. I mean, this was a huge spread. We can talk about, were they going to cover the spread and all those kinds of things, such a large number. I was off on that prediction of 52-10. Not off terribly, but, it's hard picking a 43-point win regardless. But anyway, the only real kind of negative news that came out about this game involved BJ Foster and kind of what happened or what didn't happen, or kind of how things played out with his apparently, people say, quitting on the team in the third quarter and calling it a night because I guess he was upset about playing time or whatever has been discussed. Mike, do you have any insight on that? Anything you've heard that could clear some of this up?
Yeah, just the lack of playing time. You got to remember that this is a rough year for everybody off the field with, obviously dealing with COVID and just different things. And then you got to think that he's one of the highest rated recruits in his position group, and he's not starting, and he's really just in kind of a sub package role like we kind of talked about in the preview. He could probably start for a lot of teams in the conference. And I think the frustration, everything just boiled over, and he made a mistake. I actually had a long discussion with my brother where we were just kind of going back and forth, where that's kind of a cardinal sin to just quit on a team like in the middle of a game. I mean, I don't know how you come back from that in the locker room. Tom Herman even struggled to kind of explain why he's still with the team, because he showed up the next day to wait in the weight room. So, but then again, you got to think, my brother was on the team in the mid-90s, said, guys, at that age. Just think about what we did. I mean, we did dumb stuff coming up. I mean, so I think the coaches want to give him another chance. I hate to think that it's because he is so talented. I don't know if Kai Money did this, if that would be, and even a thought that he would still be on the team. So we'll see. He's going to be buried on the depth chart now. But kind of like Anthony Cook, I mean, these guys are so highly rated. I think you just got to find something in these guys and just make it work. And that's what Tom Herman needs to do as a CEO of the program. So, Jay, what did you think about everything that happened with B.J. Foster?
That was my first take also, was you abandoned your team in the middle of a game, and he was out of the stadium. He was gone before the end of the game.
Yeah, he might as well have ridden with us. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. When Kerry and I were first discussing this, I asked him, I said, is this really how it's going to be? Like, is this the game we're going to play? You walk off and it's just, okay, he was going to serve his thing internally, which I'm sure he will. And a part of that will be the fact that he will now be buried on the depth chart. He's going to have to earn, not that he wasn't already having to earn it, but now it's going to be even harder for him to see the field initially. But this seems like the type of year where a player like that early on in the season might make a mistake and regret it and then have to work his way back. And then if Texas has the year that we all think they're going to have, like, they're going to need B.J. Foster at some point in this season to be successful.
That's exactly right.
So, I mean, like, that's what you got to hope. You got to hope the young man works his way back, works his tail off and shows his teammates that he's there for them. And because at some point they're going to need him. So I hope that that's the way that this story ends and that this is a one-time deal. I don't want Tom Herman to have to deal with explaining why players are walking off in the middle of games anymore this season. There's too much, like you said, Mike, being that CEO that we all know that he needs to be for this program to be successful, that's not a part of what he needs to be having to answer in media calls on a week in and week out basis. So, I hope that that's how it turns out, but we'll see how it goes.
And what else? Well, just thinking about the defensive side of the ball. So they played an amazing game, right? But you had B.J. Foster doing this. And then Juwan Mitchell, like, what? I mean, I don't understand why. I don't know if there's something going on internally or with him or whatever it is. I mean, we talked about it on the previous show, just about him being in the portal. If he just got beat out by a walk-on, he was out there in the second half. But it's just like in these type of seasons, these aren't the type of things that you need to be dealing with, like you said, Jay. I just think in a special season, this is kind of ruin things in a locker room. So, Kerry, what do you think about just kind of that side of the ball with the issues there?
Man, it's pretty interesting. I'm trying, as we're discussing this, I'm trying to think back over, Herman's tenure at Texas and thinking about players that have either gotten in trouble or have done something to get kind of in, bad shape, if you want to call it that, with the coaching staff or their status at school. And on the BJ Foster thing, I don't think anybody can fault a player for being upset about playing time. Like, you have 100 plus players on this roster, 11 starters on each side of the ball. That's a lot of players. Every single one of them want to play. They all want to play a lot. So you're going to have 60 guys or so on that team that want to play. But quitting in the middle of the game, that almost does seem like you guys are saying, like, kind of a bridge too far. But the Juwan Mitchell thing, I mean, he's a guy that's been in and out of the portal. And then I also think about Josh Moore, like, the off the field trouble that he got into. I don't have an issue with Tom Herman keeping guys in the fold, giving them a path back to redemption, so to say.
Anthony Cook too.
Anthony Cook, yeah, and
Right.
Yeah, and so I don't have any issue with Tom Herman doing that. I guess my question is kind of like, at what point does this start to become something that hangs over Tom Herman's reputation? As, people talk about Urban Meyer and kind of the things that he lets players and such get away with in his program and other coaches. I mean, that's all that worries me about it. I think if the players, if Josh Moore goes on and has keeps his nose clean and stays out of trouble the rest of his time at Texas, then obviously it worked out. But I don't know. And the Juwan Mitchell thing, to go back to your question, Mike, about the defense, I almost feel like, I mean, they've had to keep him in the fold because of depth. And you're otherwise looking at a walk-on starting at middle linebacker, who played a lot. He played a lot in the Alamo Bowl. I don't know, but kids are kids. We can talk about this here at our age, and but we look back when we were 18, 19, 20 years old, like we all did a lot of stupid stuff and said stupid things, and it's kind of how it goes. But I don't know.
Excuse me. For me, Mike, it's like if Texas goes on and wins a Big 12 championship this season, nobody's going to care that B.J. Foster walked off the field in the UTEP game. If you win, that stuff doesn't matter as much in the grand scheme of things. I understand where you're coming from, Kerry, when you mention Urban Meyer and sort of the rep that he has. I don't think Ohio State fans or Florida fans really care now that now that he's gone. What people have thought of Urban Meyer, because they won.
Yeah, well, to be fair, all the Aaron Hernandez stuff happened after he was in Florida, right? So like that doesn't fall on the Gators. I mean, that was a Patriot thing. Right,
of course. Right. But even Tim Tebow couldn't save that. You got to win though, man. You win and things like this don't matter as much. Just win, okay? And if this keeps you from winning, if this becomes a distraction, that's a problem, and those are the sort of things that can keep a program from taking it to the next level. But if Tom Herman finds a way to turn this team right now into the special sort of team that we think it can be, it's going to be in spite of these things, not because of them. So this was a good week, good start to the season, and it's exactly what we needed to see out of this team. Let me see. We had 68 players played, 10 people caught passes. 27 players were credited with at least one tackle. That's the type of week one that elite programs put together every single year, and Texas, did it this year. Okay, we've seen it now. Now let's see once we start into a Big 12 schedule. And, I don't know, Tech isn't exactly Oklahoma, but they're not UTEP either.
Oh, who wins between Houston Baptist and UTEP?
Houston Baptist. They got a top 8 quarterback prospect in the country that people sleep on. He threw for like 500 yards the first game. I actually had him in daily fantasy sports. Shout out to him making some money.
Look at that. Look at that. What a play.
Of course you did.
Man.
Victoria East High School.
Man.
Yeah, so, but still, you think about it, it's like Houston Baptist. Every other position they have, it should have been night and day. But they had the quarterback. He's one of those D2 guys that you'll probably hear about here in the draft. But just a sad week overall outside of Oklahoma and Texas for the rest of the Big 12, really. That was pretty pathetic. So.
Yeah, it was. It was and Mike, if you can stick around with us here for a few more, that's actually a perfect segue kind of into previewing this weekend. Obviously, Texas is off. We'll see them in action at Tech next week. But and then it just came down. We were going to talk about briefly U of H versus Baylor. That game's been postponed. That one has been.
Yes.
That one's been put on the book. So it's really, we're just looking at the only game of any notable interest really is Tulsa at Oklahoma State. OSU's favored by 23.5 in that one.
Which is kind of surprising. I know Tulsa returns their quarterback and one of their really good receivers. But 23, I was expecting to see a line closer to the 30s with the firepower. But that might just say to me that Oklahoma State doesn't have that good of a defense this year. So they're expecting Tulsa to put up some points with their quarterback and receiver that are returning that are pretty good.
Yeah, and that's
– Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I was just going to say that makes a ton of sense, Mike, with that line, because I think we know Oklahoma State's going to probably put up 50, 55, maybe 60 against Tulsa. But Tulsa might also score 40. So it'll be interesting to see Oklahoma State against Tulsa's. Again, that's one of those teams where you hear every once in a while you hear Tulsa beat a team that they shouldn't. I'm not saying that Tulsa's going to beat Oklahoma State by any stretch, but we'll see how Oklahoma State comes out in a game where, Mike, like you said, I feel like they should be favored by a bit more than that. There is only one matchup this week between top 25 opponents. And that's Miami at Louisville. Number 17, Miami at number 18, Louisville. Louisville is currently favored by 2.5 points. Mike, what's your feeling on that game?
Yeah, so I actually really like Louisville. Malik Cunningham's a great quarterback. They have Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick at receiver. Those two guys are some of the best receivers in the ACC. I think we kind of slept on them in the preview show, honestly. Thinking about it now, they have the returning running back. He's back, as both of their running backs are back as well. So they got a really good offense. I think Miami was showcased, I think, on that Thursday. It was like either a Thursday night game. They have all 5 offensive linemen back. They're really young, though.
You got Derek King at quarterback who can do some things, but
and he was a little disappointing the first game up until the second half. It was kind of surprising that I forget who they played, but I was watching the game. He didn't do much. Now he's obviously going to settle into a role. I understand that all these teams are going to have to settle into. I mean, they all didn't have time to work together and things like that. But I think Louisville's a sleeper, man. Malik Cunningham at quarterback, man. He's a pretty good player. So I think Louisville actually covers on that one.
They are at home, yeah.
And I'm not willing to put anything on Manny Diaz, on anything associated with Manny Diaz at this point. So I feel like I would have leaned toward Louisville at that one just on that alone. But we'll see. That'll be, again, I'm probably going to watch it. There's not much else on in terms of quality matchups.
Yeah, what do you guys think about Baylor? They got postponed, right? So they haven't played a game yet. Like, because their first game, right, was against Louisiana Tech, if I'm not mistaken. That got postponed due to COVID as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah. I believe so. So I don't know if I just, it was a tweet from Bruce Feldman I saw before we started recording today. There was no other information about rescheduling that or anything. So, I mean, it sounds like Baylor's just going to jump right into conference play.
And no bye weeks, maybe. And, I mean, that's they're not supposed to really do much. But as we were talking in the preview show, there could have been someone that crept up. But, I mean, with this going straight through a season and not starting so late, I mean, it's going to really hurt that program. So, especially everything they're going through as well.
Yeah, it's going to be – sorry, Jay.
No, Mike, I was just going to say, like, that's sort of the same thing with the Big Ten is trying to push everything into 8 weeks and not leave themselves any wiggle room. Like, and I applaud them for looking, going back, this is the medical advice we're receiving now. If the medical advice they're receiving is telling them that they can play, okay, like they want to do it. There's a lot of money also involved, as we know. Go ahead, Mike.
Is it the medical advice?
Okay, well, that's what they're going to tell us, right? So, but follow the money, like we always say. And but that definitely puts Baylor at a disadvantage, Kerry.
Yeah, and it's going to be such a weird season to begin with because, I mean, obviously, but like, especially in Baylor's case with Dave Aranda and this whole new staff, all the changes that have gone on there, the offseason with Matt Rule leaving and everything. It's like, how many weeks can they just continue to practice and prepare for a game that doesn't end up happening? So they've prepared now for 2 different teams that they haven't played yet. And, I'm not going to cry for them. It's Baylor, but like that has to be tough on especially a new coaching staff. If you've got continuity and you're settled into the program, that's one thing, but that's got to be challenging for Dave Aranda and that crew there. But that's the nature of what we're looking at here. I mean, that's why I mean, if we're able to get the Big 12 season on its own finished in time in its entirety, I think is going to be pretty impressive because these kind of things are going to happen during conference play, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, we're just staring at a weird season, like you said. Just one last thought before I jump out of here, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on again. I know my background isn't as aesthetically pleasing, but polo today, Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be the 2-team race. I mean, I'm really interested to see what Oklahoma State does against Tulsa. But I think if you just looked at the way Texas and Oklahoma handled their business, it just looks like those two are destined potentially. And we'll see what Oklahoma State's quarterback looks like and their defense looks like because they could throw their name to the hats. Like, and I think, Jay, you predicted they'll be in the Big 12 title game. I think those will be the 2 key components to look at. So other than that, looking forward to the Tech game, guys. And, I'll holler at you guys, next time we do the show.
Sounds good, man.
Sounds
We
great,
should try
man.
to get
Thanks
a
so
we
much.
should try to get a preview show going before next weekend. So we
For
should.
sure. Y'all let me
Yeah.
know. All right, guys. See ya.
All
Excellent.
right, hook
Thanks,
'em.
Mike.
Thanks.
All right. Good stuff. Well, Jay, we can keep trucking on through here. It's nice having Mike on and kind of wrapping up the Texas game from last week. Yeah. Anything else about this Big Ten thing you want to get into, or?
No, it's just, that's going to obviously put them at a competitive disadvantage. Uh, it's going to be difficult. These teams, I know they're trying very hard. They're being very diligent. I know the coaches are telling the players how important it is to really, follow all these protocols, take things seriously, because this season relies on every single one of them doing that. So if they can do it and guys are staying safe, I'm all for this season, man. It's just I'm still skeptical that we'll get through this entire year without something happening. But I don't know. It's just it puts them at a big disadvantage. But like I said, if the Big Ten get 8 conference games in, I'm glad to have them in the conversation for a playoff. But I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think the winner of the Big Ten will be in a position to be ranked high enough to get into the playoff.
You don't think
But
so?
I think it'll still be the winner of the SEC, the winner of the Big 12, the winner of the ACC, and another team from the SEC. I don't think the Big Ten will play a role in the playoff, even if they get a slate of games in.
So you don't think if Ohio State runs this 8 or 9 game schedule, or whatever they're running with, you don't think that they're going to get a look?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is that I don't think anybody in the Big Ten is going to run the table. I don't think it's going to happen for the Big Ten this year. So I don't. If Ohio State runs the table, sure, I think they're in the conversation. But man, I don't see anybody getting through the Big Ten schedule unscathed this year. I just think I'm still sticking with the 2 SEC schools, Clemson probably, and the Big 12 winner.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think for me, the only shot that a Big Ten team has to get in, it has to be something like Ohio State, like
Sure,
because just of the brand name, and we know how the playoff committee works and all that stuff. Because this is, it is going to come down to something where the amount of games that other conferences are playing versus the amount of games that the Big Ten is playing. Like, you could have a case where you have someone like a second SEC team that's played 10 games and lost a couple, versus an Ohio State that has played 8 or 9 and lost 1, kind of thing. And I don't know. I do agree with you though, and who's going to the playoffs. I'm just curious to see how that's going to be weighed out towards the end of the season, what the committee's going to do to kind of balance these,
Yeah.
the disparity between amount of games, amount of conference games, and all that kind of stuff, strength of schedule, those kinds of things that they say they take into account.
I think let me rephrase it. I think this year, more than any, the eye test will be the true determining factor in who's playing in the college football playoff. I mean, we watch a lot of college football. We can tell, there's a reason that we're so sure that Clemson is going to be in the college football playoff. It's like you watch that program and you just know that the level that they are at right now, like, you just watch the quality of football. The eye test tells you Clemson is one of the best teams in the country every year. I think this year the eye test will be, it'll probably be Alabama, Clemson, Texas, and then I think Florida is going to be that team. And we talked about this in our preview show. That's just the eye test. Florida will just be that team that is going to pop off the page.
Totally agree. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I think I saw today Wisconsin had 40 plus positive tests within their program, once players and coaches and staff and all those things today. So I know they got some time to work that out before that conference kicks off, but it's going to be fascinating to see. So, well, Jay, what do you think? We can let's keep trucking along here. If you want to keep cruising on through, let's get into some news this week. What do you think?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's dive into some. Well, It's better than it was last week when we dive into our beloved Houston Astros.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
as
mean,
disgusted.
no, it's not as bad, but they still haven't been able to string more than one win in a row. They kind of went win, loss, win, loss, win, loss over the past, however many days. I mean, I know they won the series against the Rangers, so they're sitting at as of today. I know they have a game tonight, but as of recording right now, they're right at 500, and they're 6 back of the Oakland A's, 3 ahead of Seattle, and there's 10 games to go. We're 50 games into this thing. There's 10 games to go. 6 back of Oakland. I think the division's out of reach at this point. They're 3 ahead to be in that second playoff spot in the AL West, which is fine, but they need to win these games. They have 3 after this 3-game series against Arizona, which is the last home series of the season. It's already so bizarre to think that, like, that's it. With 3 more games at Minute Maid Park before it's done. But then they go to Seattle for 3. Depending on how this Arizona series goes, that Seattle series is going to be interesting. I mean, they've struggled. The Astros have struggled on the road. I mean, am I just being a pessimist here, thinking that this is the series that's going to decide the season?
I think it could be a little bit even more stretched out by the time they get there, and they could seal the deal going into Houston. Could seal the deal going into Seattle. I've said this from the start. I just don't think Seattle is that good. I don't think they're good enough to make a run and be 3 games better than Houston in the last 10 games of the season. I'm not a believer in the Mariners at all.
Yeah, they get the Padres this series too. So
yeah, good luck with that. So I think the Astros are fine. Win and get in, just get into the playoffs. And then, but I tell you what, if the bats don't get going very soon, it won't matter if they make the playoffs or however they get there, because they're going to get their butts kicked quickly and be gone, because they won last night 2-1, right? Framber,
a huge night.
Needed another night out of that, like that, from our pitching staff. When Framber had tied his career high with 11 Ks, and you get a 2-1 victory because Kyle Tucker is, again, the MVP of this team and hits a 2-run homer. And the night before, Kerry, McCullers looked real good, but
that was a 1-0 loss. He looked great.
Yeah.
A wasted quality start for Lance, because, and look, I know Presley has had his issues, and we rightfully have been on his ass, but to give up that run in the 9th inning, but again, where were the bats? They got 4 hit, for the night, and shut out
by Kyle Gibson. That's not acceptable to me. We looked at that lineup pregame and saw Kyle Gibson was pitching, and I was salivating. I said, this is going to be the night that the bats come alive. Look at that lineup. And then they got shut out and got 4 hits.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not happening right now for him. Altuve's back in the lineup. The lineup is the lineup that, at least for me, that I want to see on an everyday basis. They're just not scoring any runs right now.
Nope. And like you said, that's a problem, and it's just something that we've talked about before here. We've yet to really see it all come together, where the bats are awake and you get something like a quality start out of Lance McCullers, that night. We haven't seen all those pieces come together. It's either the pitching's performing and the bats are asleep, or the bats are awake for that night, but the pitching is just atrocious. Yeah, 10 games to go. Got to figure it out, because otherwise it's looking like it's going to be a 3-game set against the White Sox or the A's. And those are 2 clubs that are, the A's they're struggling a little bit here and there, but the Astros are looking at being the 8th seed in the American League, and they're going to get the number 1 seed to start off the postseason in a 3-game set. And
yeah, beggars can't be choosers. Just get in and take what you can take. And, it's just, again, the Astros you look at the roster on paper, it's like, man, you don't really want to play that team in the first round. Nobody wants to play Houston in the first round of the playoffs. I don't care if they're the 8th seed or if they're the 2 seed. Nobody wants to play Houston in the first round when you look at that roster up and down. despite their struggles right now. But so if you're Houston, you just get in and you play and you play the hand that you're dealt, and you just got to hope as an Astros fan that the bats can come alive, and that you continue to get pitching like you've gotten over the last couple of nights from McCullers and for Amber Valdez.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. By the time that we record next week, we'll have a pretty good idea where this team's going to be sitting.
I would say we'll know whether or not this season team's going to be in the playoffs by the time we record next week.
Absolutely. I do agree with you in that I think we'll know by the time that this team heads to Seattle, if the games are actually held in Seattle, whether or not they're going to, kind of what they're looking at. So, I think the Padres are going to beat up on the Mariners the next few nights. And I think, it seems like par for the course right now. I see Houston going 2-1 against Arizona. A sweep would be fantastic, but I think they go 2-1 at home. And, if Seattle goes 1-2 in that Padres series or whatever, however many games they have against them, I mean, that's a good 5-game or so cushion before that series starts. And I think they'll be all right. So, Well, we got Zoom mandated break coming up. Jay, let's break it real quick and let's come back and let's get into some more of the news this week. I know we got a lot to hit on. A lot of sport ball action happening this week and to come this week. So let's take a quick one. We'll be right back.
Be right back.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Short little break there. Let's dive right back into it here. Sports news of the week. Jay, the Dallas Stars, since we last recorded, ended up winning the Western Conference Finals in the NHL, a 4-1 series win. As we've kind of discussed a little bit here, this has been a weird playoff season for the Stars. The way that they look kind of stumbling through the round robin games. I mean, this is not, it's been, I don't know. I don't want to say difficult to kind of pick them and kind of, feel confident in them being, but Vegas is such a strong team. And so I'll kind of lead off the Stars conversation on this real quick with the ESPN panel of NHL experts, 17 of them, each make their series picks before each of these series in the postseason. 14 of the 17 picked the Vegas Golden Knights to eliminate the Stars in the Western Conference Finals. That's kind of what everybody was expecting to happen, was Vegas, that maybe Dallas would stretch the series to 6 or 7 games, but that Vegas was going to come out on top. Too much depth, great goaltending. They're a team that's kind of built for playoff hockey, and that's kind of how everybody picked it to be. The Stars won it in 5 and looked pretty good doing so. They frustrated Vegas. They were physical with them. So I bring up those ESPN picks because they just released their picks for the Stanley Cup final, Dallas Stars versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. The 17 ESPN NHL experts, 14 out of 17 picked the Tampa Bay Lightning to win this Stanley Cup final. It's not all of them are the exact same ones that picked Dallas to beat Vegas, but again, 14 to 17, that's a pretty heavy consensus going towards Tampa. And again, Tampa's a really, really strong team. They were the best team by a large margin last season in the NHL when they got bounced out of the first round by the Columbus Blue Jackets, and a huge one of the bigger playoff upsets in recent memory. So they're back, they're angry, but they've struggled a little bit in the playoff bubble with teams that can play physical. The New York Islanders are built kind of like the Dallas Stars, and have kind of they took them to the brink a little bit. I mean, they didn't push it to 7 games or anything like that, but Jay, are you looking forward to watching this Stanley Cup final? I mean, this is it. This is the kind of, hockey fans everywhere go, if you want to watch hockey, this is the time to tune in.
Right. And I always do. And I will this year, especially now with the Stars in the Cup final. the Stanley Cup playoff tournament, not necessarily this year, although this year was badass to watch it develop the way that it is, even in its usual normal, whatever normal used to be format. The Stanley Cup playoffs are widely considered the best playoff system to win or to go through. Like it's the hardest to win, it's the best to watch, it's the best action, it's the best quality of games. And we're seeing that this year across the board. And the Stars just didn't win in 5. They won impressively in 5, out manning a Vegas team that, like you said, most people considered to just be able to make easy work, maybe not easy, but to make work of the Stars. And we both discussed how the hard-fought series that the Stars had come through to get to this point, to get to Vegas, that might be their doing in. But it turns out you get there and they look like the fresher team. They look like the hungrier team. They look like a team that has made their mind up that they're going to win the Stanley Cup. And it's just it's fascinating to watch a team that nobody considered, hardly anybody really considered, especially after the first play-in round of the bubble, that the Stars would be in this position. And you look at them, and like I said, they didn't just beat Vegas. They took it to Vegas. And this is going to be a fantastic Stanley Cup final to watch. So like you said, even if you're not into hockey, this will be a series that you can get in front of your television and enjoy some excellent hockey, because that's what we're going to get out of this series.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, the Stars are going to do what they do. They've had to win different ways throughout this playoff run. Calgary was a kind of physical, find your feet after that round robin play in. The Colorado series, they just had to outscore Colorado. That was a huge scoring series between both teams. And then they had to play physical to beat Vegas, low scoring games, and really kind of drag Vegas into their game, which worked. Tampa can do a little bit of both. They can outscore you, but they can also get physical and play an ugly defensive. To me, it's not ugly. I love defensive hockey. It's what I love. That's the style of play I grew up with, and that I enjoy. But it's going to be low scoring, or at least the Stars want to keep this thing low scoring. And they've done this the whole way through this playoff run with their backup goalie. And
what a story!
Yeah, everything about it has just been fascinating and really kind of surreal. I mean, this is 20 years, the first time in 20 years that the Stars have been in the Stanley Cup final. I vividly remember those 99 and 2000 runs, winning a championship in 99 and then losing to New Jersey in the 2000 one. But, those were teams that were loaded with talent. Like, those were teams that were finishing towards the top of the standings, if not at the top of the standings in the regular season, with Mike Modano and Brett Hull and Joe Nieuwendyk and these Hall of Famer players. This isn't that team. And that's what makes this is not a run that people expected. And it's when the Stars won that elimination game in overtime, it was like, holy shit, this is a team that this team is in the Stanley Cup final. Of all the ones from the past 20, 25 years, this is the one to end up there. So it's kind of surreal. And it's, I mean, not that COVID or anything and playing in a bubble doesn't make any of it surreal either, but
Right.
Enjoying the run. And I think it's going to be a really good series. I don't know if I've quite made a pick on the previous series. I just, I'll kind of let the experts at ESPN decide that and let those 14-17 pick Tampa again, and let's see how it shakes down. One last thing on the Stars before we move on. Those of you that are that watch in the Austin area are probably familiar, if you're a sports fan, with the Texas Stars that play up in Cedar Park at the HEB Center now. I say now, I think it's been there for 2 years or something. You still want to call it the Cedar Park Center, but
absolutely.
But they, our AHL team here in the Austin area that plays up there, 84% of this Dallas Stars team has played with the Texas Stars for, more than just a one game call, go down to the minors type thing. The influence that the Texas Stars have on the Dallas Stars in this run is massive. It's a group of players that have played together for a while, and players that a lot of people that have gone to games here in Austin have seen. So there is a local connection, in Austin with this team that's making this run. I should also, in interest of fairness, the Tampa Bay Lightning, 91% of their team came through their AHL system. I don't have the numbers here, but just from following hockey the way that I do, I'd have a hard time imagining that many other teams in the NHL that are playoff teams have that high of a participation rate from their minor league system. So it just goes to show building from the inside and being able to add a few key, signings here and there is a pretty good recipe for success. So,
yeah, I mean, when that just speaks to the way that those organizations are run. The Stars and the Lightning are obviously, and the Stars have been for a while. It hasn't really worked out, like you said. It's been 20 years since they've made it to a Stanley Cup final, but it's not for the lack of talent that's gone through that club. And they've produced it. They've been producing it from down here in Cedar Park for a long time. And I think we've touched on that before. I mentioned how cool it is to watch this team now and see how many names I watched skate in Cedar Park. And it's just it's evidence of a very well-run organization. So kudos to the Stars, and we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a great series, man. I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
Yeah, and that starts tomorrow night, Saturday night, game 1. It's setting up to be an interesting schedule for that. Apparently the NHL didn't want to try to compete with the NFL next week, so games 3 and 4 I think are going to be on back-to-back nights, a Friday, Saturday type thing. Maybe it's 4 and 5, whatever it is, but kind of interesting back-to-back potential elimination games in the Stanley Cup final on a Friday, Saturday night. So could make for some good TV, but yeah, looking forward to it. So Jay, let's transition off from Dallas and go to Houston here. Let's since we last recorded, the Rockets were eliminated by the Lakers. What are your thoughts? What do you want to get into with the Rockets here? I know there's a lot of decisions that the Rockets are going to be making this offseason. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with D'Antoni already being out as the coach and just knowing that they're going another direction there, I think that it's not that D'Antoni's not a good coach. It's that he's not going to win a championship in Houston with the way that he's been doing things, and that's what we discussed last episode when we both correctly predicted that the Lakers are going to handle business in Game 5 and send Houston packing. The thing, though, is you have this generational, and I understand the magnitude of that word, but James Harden is a generational talent. He is a generational scorer of the basketball. His defense has picked up to levels that, people still make the claim about he doesn't play defense, and we'll discuss that in a second, but it's just like he is, and in my opinion, he is a generational player. Harden was chosen on the All-NBA first team with LeBron, Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Luka Doncic up in Dallas. By the way, that's LeBron 16 out of 17 seasons all time, which is a record. So he's LeBron. He's putting in first team All-NBA seasons at how old is he? 34, 35?
35, I think. Yeah.
I mean, but anyways, so Harden, All-NBA first team, won his 3rd straight scoring title this year. Only the 4th player since the merger of the ABA with the ABA in 1976 to win 3 straight. The other 3, Kevin Durant, George Gervin, Michael Jordan.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, right? Who? 3rd player in league history to average more than 34 points in a game more than once. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan are the other 2.
No names.
Who are those guys? 3rd player to lead the league in total points, which it wasn't even close, by the way, and total steals in the same season. So there's the defensive, he led the league in total steals, and it wasn't by 2. Like, the guy he plays defense. The other 2 players that have led the league in total points and total steals, Allen Iverson, Hall of Famer, Michael Jordan. this is the type of player that we're talking about here, and the type of company that he's keeping with the sort of recognition that he's receiving, man. And are we really going to see a player like this and J.J. Watt at the same time with the Texans, these once in a generation type foundational players, and are they never going to win a ring for Houston? And I mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily all their fault, but is it just ever going to happen for these guys, you know?
Oh man. I have a harder time thinking it's going to happen for Harden in Houston. I think for Watt, there's different factors at play. Obviously, Deshaun Watson's locked into a deal. I think that we can, Bill O'Brien aside and personnel stuff, all that. I think the path is easier, if you will, for J.J. Watt to win a ring in Houston than it is for James Harden with the Rockets. As we've discussed before, and I think for me, as impressive as those numbers are, which they are, like that's a Hall of Fame resume. There's no question about that. But we talked about the plan A, the plan B, these things we get into playoffs, into the deep runs in the playoffs. Like what do the Rockets need to complement James Harden to put this team over the top?
The problem for me is that James Harden will never, at least not in his peak form right now. I think what they need is for him to lower his usage rate and to play fewer minutes. But to do that, he gets hammered. He gets fouled so much. I don't care what, he goes to the free throw line more than anybody in the league, and that's
right.
Also not close. He draws a lot of fouls. I don't care what you say about him, how the way that he draws them. He draws fouls. He gets foul calls, which means he scores points for his team, which means during the regular season, at least, he's a winner. So, I mean, like, that's another thing to me. It's like, well, he scores all of his points from the free throw line. I don't understand why that's a bad thing. I never understood that knock. But to your point, Kerry, I don't know what they're going to have to do in terms of if there can be another piece. Because, I mean, I love watching Russell Westbrook play. I love watching Russell Westbrook play. He can be frustrating to watch at times.
Right.
But I love watching him play. He was all NBA third team. But, I mean, is it a thing where he's going to have another guy? Is he one of those that has to have a third superstar, sort of a dream team scenario? And I just don't know who's going to be coming available because all these guys are signing deals and getting locked down.
Well, that's the big thing. I mean, like you'd say, like, oh, you get him Giannis. That's it. Harden and Giannis. Okay, that's a team that can win the West and win in the finals. I think you can say the same thing like about Dallas. If the Mavericks go and get Giannis to add to Luka, like, that's a team that can go win a championship. But how are you going to get it? How are you going to get that player? And that's where,
because Giannis has met with Bucks management and ownership recently. He unfollowed the team on social media. He unfollowed all of his teammates. I'm not sure. I don't think that's something that he does every year. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where although the timing for that, I love Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's my favorite player to watch in the league over Harden. I think he won the MVP, or it's sort of leaked out that he'll be announced that he'll be awarded the MVP again this year. I mean, that's another one of those sort of generational talents, and he's still so young. He's still so young. He's going to continue to develop, and that's going to be super scary when he's at his peak. But that's right, Kerry. I mean, Giannis is like one of the few people that I can think of where it's like, if you pair them together, because it's LeBron and Anthony Davis, right? Like you got your big guy. I mean, that's the comparison, right?
Exactly, and that's. I mean, just thinking of someone that we talk about as we have before, in these playoff games when Plan A is not working, and Harden's not hitting his shots, and things just aren't working. Where's the Plan B? Where do you go to diversify your offense, mix things up, start getting baskets where you typically don't get them? I mean, to me, that's the kind of pairing that I think of and go, that you add Giannis to that lineup, it automatically puts the Rockets in that, like, beyond where they are now into that conversation of an actual, not a team that can just contend for the West, but a team that that's a championship contender.
Yep.
And it's easy to say that, like, we're talking, like, how the hell do you get him on that team?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a pipe dream. I mean, like,
Exactly. And
he's
so
not
what do you do?
happy, right? But you'd probably have to trade Russell Westbrook to the Bucks because he couldn't have that because Giannis wants to get paid. Like, it would be a sign and trade that would happen, and Giannis would sign his Supermax extension with the Bucks, and then the Bucks would trade him for Westbrook. I mean, that's really the only way. I mean, we're saying it out loud now. I would flip for that, man. Like, that would be
Absolutely.
I mean, but if Giannis goes and tells them, he goes, I'm not playing here anymore, but I want to help you guys out. So what? And I want to make my Supermax money. So sign me to this deal, trade me for Russ, or what? That's the only way it could work in Houston, right? Like, that's the only way that this thing could happen.
Yeah. And that's what, I mean, Morey, when he starts making phone calls, he always seems to pull something out from his sleeve every offseason. I mean, who knows? But I mean, to me, that's just the only move that I could see that bumps the Rockets up into that next tier at this point. And I think that says a lot about, you mentioned LeBron and Anthony Davis. Golden State hasn't left, even though they had a down season and had players out. They're going to be back.
Yep.
And Clippers, their massive choke job, they'll be around, I guess, unless Kawhi decides he wants to leave there.
Man, and I think justifiably so. The Clippers were a team that and they were cruising too, man. Like, I mean, they were up 3-1 in that series as well. And I mean, that was just unexpected, 100%. I didn't think Kawhi would let that happen. I was shocked when they lost that series, but I mean, I don't know. It's the West will be available. Like, LeBron's not getting any younger. I know he's first team All NBA, but it's not that the Lakers are untouchable.
No,
like that's like that they're beatable.
Yeah.
We're not talking 98,
Yeah.
97 Bulls or whatever, like where this is like, yeah, I mean,
no,
and the West is out there, but you have to have the right pieces to carry to sort of what you were getting at earlier.
Yeah. And before we move on to the NFL stuff here, last thing, I mean, would it surprise you all that much if Denver pushes the Lakers pretty hard in this Western Conference final?
No, but
Not saying they're going to win it, but would it surprise you with the way that they play that Denver can give them a little bit of trouble? I don't know.
Now, similar to what I thought about the Dallas Stars, I feel like that was really all Denver had. I mean, it took everything to win that series, and I don't know. I hope so. I hope it's a great series because there's been some great basketball and some great comebacks and some things that have happened, which, it's going to happen. We expected wild things to happen in this bubble, but for the Clippers to not be there, I think was the most surprising thing to me out of everything that's happened so far. We'll see. I think it'll be a great series.
Well, let's get some NFL talk in here before we run out of time.
Yeah.
You're recording on a Friday. Let's hit on some of the kind of recap a little bit. I know the Cowboys were a disappointment. I know we talked about how maybe they could be a contender in the NFC this year. They didn't look like it. I know the Rams aren't bad, but that was a game that the Cowboys, I think, should win if they have hopes of winning the NFC. They didn't look good. They get the Falcons this week. Dallas is a 4-point favorite. Falcons are going to be pretty bad this year. I think Dallas should win the game this week, but yeah, they look.
I think there's going to be some points scored in that game.
Oh yeah. I don't. Yeah. Well,
I think.
Yeah, there should be.
I think Dallas does win, and I think Dallas covers. But I think there's going to be. I mean, I'm thinking like a 35-28 type of game, like where I think both teams get in the end zone and start to find a rhythm. Julio Jones is Julio Jones, but he's not the only weapon there in Atlanta either. So I mean, that'll be a shootout to me. And what else sticks out to you in NFL right now? Oh, Kerry, I wanted to bring this up to you. I made note of this. David Johnson, who's the running back that was brought over in the deal that sent DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals, in his peak, he was an all-pro running back. But it hasn't been there. The injuries have really piled up. But I tell you what, Kerry, he looked sharp in week 1. And his quote was, just to be back out there and do what I did in that game, it definitely just really hopefully put everyone on notice that I didn't go anywhere. And I'm back now.
He's back.
He's back. We're hesitant to with that phrase on this show, but he did look sharp, and especially on that touchdown run.
He did.
If they can keep his carries down, because the Texans, if they're going to be successful, should run the ball 25 to 30 times a game. Watson's going to have 8 to 10 of those, and if you can get David Johnson 15 carries a game, and then just give 5 to whoever's the backup. I mean, that's the formula for success for me for the Texans in terms of their running game. So it was good to see him on the field and look that crisp.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be another big test this week for him in that Texans offense, and the Texans defense too, as the Texans host the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore's a 7-point favorite. I mean, that seems about right. This is Baltimore gave it to the Texans last year in Baltimore. They're good. They
sure did.
And that's what, we talk about this early season schedule, but this is one of those ones where if you look at the score on paper and Baltimore wins by 7, I don't think, okay, fine. But how did they look? And we talk about the eye test and those kinds of things. This early part of the season against Kansas City, and then you get Baltimore, and then you get Pittsburgh, and then you get Minnesota, and it doesn't slow down. How does this team look after the loss in Kansas City? Are they going to get back up? Are they going to be competitive? Are they going to want to show some fight? And even if they lose that game to Baltimore, if they look the part of a team that is going to stick this thing out week to week and keep fighting, then I'll feel a lot better about it. But if this is a team that goes out there hanging their heads once something goes wrong early on, and I think that's going to not bode well for the next few weeks in terms of this team trying to build some confidence and trying to get things going with a new play caller and new, all the changes that have happened. So,
yeah, if you see a bunch of Texans out there with their daubers down, like this season could get out of hand real quick. And we even said, if they get through this first 6 games 2-4 and sort of look at the back half of that schedule and say, okay, that's manageable. The first half of your season's a little bit rough. You can learn a little bit about who you are as a team. And then once you get to the back half of the schedule and you start to get into a rhythm and hopefully Watson's, Deshaun Watson, it's manageable, but it does matter how they look. We'll know after this first 6 games the type of team that Houston's going to be. And I think Baltimore wins handily. I think this isn't a close game, but it does matter how they look in this matchup, and moving forward, it's to just keep that going for the upcoming schedule, because they got to win. They got to start winning. Even if you lose this week, I'm okay with losing to Baltimore, but then you can't go out the next week and like you said, have your dauber down and let that old cliche. You can't let that loss beat you twice.
Yeah, you can't start looking at going 0-4 or 1-5, those kinds of numbers where it really starts to feel insurmountable. So take it one at a time, but we'll see. But we got a few minutes here. It's a couple minutes. Let's hit on a couple NFL notes beyond that. Saints big time wide receiver Michael Thomas had a kind of ugly looking ankle sprain last week. He's going to miss a few weeks. Real quick, does this change anything for you about the New Orleans Saints over the next few weeks? They looked really good against Tampa.
No. I mean, when I think of the top wide receivers in the league, the short list for me is DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, and just Julio Jones for me is in terms of just skill set. Those are the guys, and it's going to hurt them. To lose that type of a guy will hurt, but I think they'll be fine. I don't think it really affects much of their.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll pass the ball around. They'll get it to some other players and still score buckets of points. So
is the quarterback there still Drew Brees?
Yeah,
exactly. So they'll be fine.
Yeah. Dude, they got Jameis on the bench though, and Taysom Hill. They
And
got,
Taysom Hill. Oh God, let's not talk about Taysom.
what a group there.
What a guy though. But I mean, yeah, we got Taysom Hill horror stories, but the guy is a serviceable NFL rostered quarterback, and I think that the thought for them, because he's going to want to branch out. I mean, he wants to be a quarterback, so they're going to have a decision to make here real soon on how they're going to treat that. And like you said, even if he goes, you got famous Jameis over there, Jabbo. Oh wait, Jabu. Jabu. That's his nickname.
Jameis, what a guy. What a guy. Well, let's a couple. We had a note in here about masks on the sidelines. You saw Sean McVay with his mask down under his chin for the bulk of that, at least for the part I saw, the Cowboys-Rams game last week. A lot of coaches. You got Andy Reid with the windshield action going on. It's defrost on it.
I saw a clip that it was Travis Kelce walking by him in pregame, and he said, "You know how I know you're ready? It's because you got all this going right here. You got the fog going, coach." And then he just took off, and Andy Reid, just like looks at him. And,
that big IHOP menu that he holds.
Yeah.
Man. And then other notable game this week that kind of stood out to me, Patriots at Seattle. I think that's the Sunday night game. Seattle -4. They're a 4-point favorite. You like the Seahawks in this one at home?
I'm not touching the Patriots at all. I think Cam Newton looked great in week 1, but I don't know. I'm still not ready to really put anything on the side of the Patriots. I would take Seattle to cover that, and I just think that I think every pick I made today was a favorite covering. But either way, I do think Seattle takes care of business there, especially at home. What are they going to do with the air quality over there? Is that going to be a problem?
I have no idea. I think the idea is that I know the Mariners were having to move games because of air quality, and I think that's why they may even be playing in San Diego technically as the home team in this Padres series. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I think maybe their hope is that the quality's suitable enough to play Sunday night. Who knows? But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because we're going to learn a lot about the Patriots in this game.
Oh yeah.
If this is a game where the Patriots come out with a win, that's, for at least in my mind, this early part of the season where you start, okay, maybe we, as we probably should anyway, take the Patriots a little more seriously as a threat this season. I know it's not Baltimore or Kansas City, but is this going to be Belichick's perfect dream of winning a championship solely on defense and a run game is this kind of where it is?
No, and without Tom Brady. I mean, and that's on his mind. And Cam can do it. Like we talked about that. Like he has the skill set. He's not quite the runner that he once was, but he's
effective
lead a team.
Though.
He's definitely effective. And Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels will put him into positions to be successful. And they're the best in the league at doing that for their quarterbacks. They did it for Tom Brady's Tom Brady, but they also, whenever he went out, what's the guy that came in and went 10-6 when Brady went out in the first?
Matt Castle.
Matt Castle went out and got a big fat paycheck based off of being put into a position to be successful by Bill Belichick and that offense. So, I mean, the more we're talking about this, the more I feel like this is a game that the Patriots go in, because there's a lot of people like us thinking that they're, that maybe it's not their time yet. And with everything that's going on in Seattle, it's just one of those things where it's like, maybe that's a game that Cam Newton really comes out. Is that the Sunday night game?
That's the Sunday night game.
That's a game, man. Cam Newton on national TV with a point to make. I tell you what, man, I'm actually going to switch my pick there. I don't know if the Pats win, but I don't think Seattle's going to cover that. That's going to be a close one, I think, man.
Crowd is not going to have the effect that it typically does. I don't know if they're going to have any fans in the stadium there in Seattle, or if it's going to be an empty building, but it's not going to have the same effect that situation up there typically does. I don't know. Maybe it's just how the Patriots looked week 1. Maybe it's fool's gold, but I'm with you. I think they cover the spread. I don't know if they quite get the win, but this just seems like a Belichick early season special where This is
Yeah.
the classic Belichick business trip. He's got the hoodie's going to have the cutoff sleeves. He's ready to go.
Yeah, that's gonna be Sunday night. It's gonna be a good one.
Well, man, I hate to cut us short here. I think we got to call it for today.
All right, man.
Gotta get some actual bill paying work done today. And
Good luck.
but hey, the closer we get to 10,000 subscribers, which we're still on our way.
Yeah, we're well on our way. Yeah.
So but this has been good. I'm glad Mike was able to join us to kind of recap the Longhorns. Let's see if we can get a short preview show before the Tech game going. And otherwise, thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks, y'all. Peace.
Thanks everyone. Have a good one.
ATX represent. Fatal, baby.